Okay, well, yeah, it's great to meet you. And so probably a little bit of background would be helpful.
Okay. Well, I was, I think I've been what you would call the seeker for the last 12 years, maybe more the last 10. I think the seeking has started to drop away. And especially, amazingly enough, I think I contacted you 6 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and I have noticed quite an expansion of awareness even in those last 6 weeks and how things have unfolded, both from what I've listened on many of the YouTube videos that I've heard of you speaking, read your book twice, maybe three times, and then listening to John Wheeler as well and reading his books and Sailor Bob. And I've sort of had just sort of these um, just a greater awareness, even though I've had some really, really amazing teachers
Mm.
over the last 12 years.
Mhm.
And I think starting this summer, I was around August, I came across Lillian Waters. And where she took me, she died, I think, in 1964, but amazing, amazing woman. And where she took me was that you just accept who you are. Just accept it. There's no more
Mm.
seeking. I mean, those aren't necessarily her words, but just accept your identity. And her main theme was, viewing life from the viewpoint of perfection. It's already perfect.
Mm.
And so that sort of stopped my seeking. But
Mm.
there was still a lot that was um, getting uncovered. And it was shortly after that that a friend of mine sent me one of your videos, and I let it sit in my inbox for a while because I thought, I've already got enough teachers. I don't need another teacher, right?
Mm.
But eventually I thought, well, just out of respect for her, I'll take a listen. And so then, of course, that led me into John Wheeler and Sailor Bob, and just applying some of the things that you share have been so beneficial. That one is, thoughts are just an invitation. And
Mm.
then John Wheeler taking, when everybody was coming from their intellect, John Wheeler bringing them back and saying, take the axe to the root of the tree. This is all just a belief that you're separate and apart. And then Sailor Bob, with his book, What's Wrong with Right Now If You Don't Think About It.
Mm.
And so just really applying those, because I am a coach as well. And so bringing those aspects into my coaching practice, it's
Mhm.
helped reinforce them with me because I'm sharing them with clients at the same time and reinforcing them with myself, if there was a myself. And and so one day there was a situation, and it was regarding noise, without getting
Mhm.
into a lot of detail around it. And I thought, and I was just about to get onto, I had a Zoom meeting that I had to get onto, and this noise was going on. And I thought, oh, what should I do something about this? And I had been listening to one of your interviews just prior to that, and I'd been taking notes. And one of the notes that I wrote down was, um, let go of the idea that you know what to do.
Mm.
And it was profound. And in that moment, I thought, okay, no, that's right. I have no idea what to do. I'm just going to forget about that, carry on with my Zoom meeting. And so that was really, really, really helpful. And it was kind of interesting because I had just listened to that interview and had that note right in front of me, and I picked it up, and that sort of jumped up off the page to me. And it was really, really powerful. And so then a lot of around this sort of noise situation, there's been a lot of challenges. And through what I have picked up from what you share and what other amazing teachers have shared with me, I felt that I was getting to the point where I was being neutral on them. So
Mm.
coming from a non-reactive point. And I thought,
Mm.
okay, this is good. And then it was really amazing because this happened about 4 nights ago. So in the middle of the night, this noise was happening. And then I realized up to now, I've been impersonalizing. Well, no, I hadn't been impersonalizing. I had been remaining neutral on it and not accepting some of the invitations, but it was still personal.
Yes.
And it was, and it really was sort of a profound understanding that I was still personalizing. And so in that moment, right, I took myself right out of the picture entirely. And one of the things that had helped me too along that, just around sound and leading up to all of that, I had through this process of finding you and John and Sailor Bob, another man came across my table, and his name was William Samuel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not. I think he died in the 1990s. But oh, I just fell in love with this man. The minute that I read his book, listened to him on YouTube, it just the feeling in my that I was experiencing from him, I hadn't really had that experience before. But he had been in the Second World War, and at 18 he was a captain, and I don't know if it was when it was in the Second World War or the Korean War. It doesn't even matter. It was one of those two wars that he fought in. But he was in a situation where he was in a he was a captain at 18, and he was in a situation where there was a sniper that they couldn't get to, that was continually shooting off rounds, and it was continual. So probably with the purpose of just wearing them down mentally.
Mm.
And it was working. He said, I was at the end of my rope with this noise. He said, I just couldn't take it anymore. And he said, I just can't take this anymore. I can't go on. And the voice came into his head. It's just a sound. And you talk about that too, with the two voices, right?
Yes.
And he says, it's just a sound. It's no different than any other sound. It's just the meaning that you're giving to it. And I'm paraphrasing here terribly, I'm sure. So that was sort of what I was applying to this situation here. I was giving that sound a lot of meaning instead of it's just a sound. And so that was really, sorry about my little dog here.
That's fine.
Her name's Sky. She's a little sweetheart. Anyway, so that was really, really, really helpful too, about not only impersonalizing myself, but impersonalizing what was coming up. As you said, there's just everything is just equally rising on that
Yes.
ocean, the waves rising on the ocean. And so, yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at. And what's been sort of happening more currently in my life. And it's been really just the best teacher ever. And I wouldn't give it up for anything, even if it continues to be ongoing. I figured, well, if it's continuing to be ongoing, then there's still a part of me that's holding on to this or whatever. But I do have a lot of questions for you, but I'll just pause there for a moment and
Sure.
and see what you have to share with me.
Well, it's really it's great you've made the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode, because it's in that distinction that there is realization, and also the opportunity to disconnect from the energetic implications of the dualistic realm, because it's only in personalization that we can take delivery of the content in a way which is going to be emotionally disturbing or mentally disturbing too. So that's a really good good sign. So so some of the exercises that I've demonstrated, are you familiar with those, Fern?
Yes, I've definitely used them myself, and I've shared them with the people that come to me for assistance as well, and it's been very
Great.
helpful. So for instance, I rarely sort of feel any kind of anxiety, but I think within the last 2 weeks, there was sort of a sense of a feeling of anxiety. So immediately I just said, there's effortless, impersonal awareness of a sensation. I didn't even call it the anxiety. And
Yes.
so, and I have used that a couple of times. And I've also used Sailor Bob's. What's wrong with right now if you're not thinking about it? This thought,
Yeah.
and getting back to you, this thought is just an invitation. So
Yes.
yes, I found that that really, really powerful. And so but I needed a little bit of clarification, because sometimes you'll have someone say there's an effortless awareness, and then sometimes you'll have them say there's an effortless impersonal awareness. Is that just
Mm.
an omission of the word on occasion, or are you leading up in steps to the impersonalization?
Well, effortless awareness is something which many people find attractive. Um, but the in-person aspect is something which takes a little bit more to integrate, because for most people, the conditioning has been very much to do with personalization. So to suggest that they're existing as an impersonal, effortless,
Mhm.
neutral, omnipotent, indestructible field of awareness can be a bit of a tall order sometimes. But do you feel that you can rest as a field of impersonal, effortless awareness and just notice the forms appearing in any moment? So in this moment, you could say there's effortless impersonal awareness of sky lying on your shoulders, and there's effortless impersonal awareness of the two voices, and effortless impersonal awareness of the objects in the room. So in any moment, there's simply effortless impersonal awareness, which is unchanging. And then there are the forms appearing within the awareness, excuse me, and those forms are ever changing. So when you make that distinction, you can see that actually you're just resting as this field of impersonal, effortless awareness, and you're actually resting as an impersonal. It's like an impersonal ocean of awareness, and it's an interesting image behind you there, actually.
Yes, the wave,
Yeah.
the wave on the ocean. That was prior to me having any idea about the situations coming as waves,
Mm.
equally and effortlessly. And um, so one of the things that William Samuel said that really, really helped me was that I'm not I mean, this is no different than what you've been saying, but the way that it was said, that's why I like to go to different teachers, because sometimes it's just the way somebody says something,
Yes,
it has that
exactly. Yeah.
little click.
Yes.
And the way he said it is, you're not the possessor of the awareness. And because that's the personalization of it, right? But
Yes.
just that word, you're not the possessor of it. Because as soon as I'm the possessor of it, then I'm into the judgment of it.
Yes.
And so that was really extremely helpful to me.
Yes.
And of course, what Sailor Bob talks about too, that really had an impact when he said he took us all the way back to the sperm and the ovum. And what did I have to do with that? Right.
Mm.
And then when it started to duplicate, and then, the heart was beating before the brain was formed, where were you in that picture?
Mm.
And then when you were born, where were you there? And then it steps over into you and what you share about prior to the age of 2,
Mm.
that we were just that impersonal awareness, and
Yes.
there was no separate identity. And one of the things, and I don't know if I heard this for someone or if it was a thought that just came into my mind, but what I sort of shared with myself, but I share with others, is that every part of my being is just a post-it note belief based on my experience, my education, and the environment that I lived in. And if I take all those post-it notes away, what's left?
Mm. Yes.
Absolutely nothing, right? And
Yeah.
so when we look at it like that, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm just a series of beliefs. But one of the things, and I think this, don't even like to admit it, but this was one of the things that inspired me to even reach out to you, is I heard, oh, and it is really exciting to see how many young people
Mm.
are having, this self-realization. It's amazing, really. But one of the things that I always felt lacking was I would hear all of these people having experiences,
Mm.
and I've
Mm.
never had an experience. And then when you were talking to Stephen, yeah, well, any of those that have had
Mm.
that awareness while you've been in conversation with them, but that stillness that even just that stillness that people experience when they're in that conversation, I don't think that I've ever really even experienced the stillness.
Mm.
And I absolutely know, and I because I've heard this from you and so many others, really, is it's not about the experience. And I realize, and I'm
Mm.
almost glad that I haven't, in that seeking aspect, haven't got caught up in the experience, because I can see where people that have, that it's been their trap. As you've
Yes.
said, just looking for their next fix,
Mm.
looking for that next experience instead of living as the impersonal being.
Yes.
And so, I do understand that, but
Good.
um, there's still, I mean, I think that there's still something there that's saying, well, you haven't had any kind of sort of stillness experience around this, so probably you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's an invitation, Fern, so that's okay. But actually, as you recognized, stillness and silence, they're experiential. So even something which is very subtle is still an experience because it has content.
Mm,
So it's fine that you don't feel that there is that experience, but the key thing is you make the distinction between awareness, which is impersonal, and the content of awareness, which are the forms appearing within that. So awareness is unchanging and the content is ever changing.
mhm,
And you are already effortlessly impersonal, effortless awareness. So you can't be anything other than that. But it's just that there are various options where we can amend the nature of the experience. But having seen that impersonal, effortless awareness is prior to any of the modes of experience, so it's prior to thought, it's prior to emotion, it's prior to the physical realm, then the benefit of knowing that is that it's possible to regulate the nature of the experience because we tend to have been conditioned into putting the mental, emotional, and physical realms together. And then we start using personalized language. And it's that combination which gives a sense that there really is a separate person. But when we look very carefully to see what's happening, we notice that there's simply effortless impersonal awareness of some thoughts arising. Um, and then there's effortless impersonal awareness of some emotion or some feeling or sensations, and effortless impersonal awareness of the body. But it's when we put those three together in the way we've been conditioned to, and then we use personalized language, I, me, and mine,
mhm.
then it's like a little recipe for personalization. But when you just break those components down, you just see that they're actually being experienced separately or independently. But it's only the way those different realms. So the mental realm is the astral realm, and the emotional realm is the etheric realm, and then there's the physical realm. So we're able to experience those realms independently. But the conditioning we've had is to experience them simultaneously and to put them together. But
So that was a question. So, and I think you just said this, but I want to make sure I've caught it right. So the thought, the emotion, and the feeling are all one. Is that what you're saying?
well, they're actually independent because the thought is arising in the astral realm, in the mental body. The emotion is arising in the etheric realm, in the etheric or emotional body. And then there's awareness of the physical body, which is arising in the physical realm.
But are
So,
they arising simultaneously, though?
well, they are arising simultaneously, but
Okay,
we can,
yeah.
when we see that the options, so there are the five koshas. So there's the body of bliss, which is an infinite impersonal field. And then there is the body of wisdom, which is also an infinite, impersonal, effortless field. Um, we can't experience the first two as a person. We can only experience them as a field of awareness, which we are. But the three dualistic koshas, so the mental, the emotional, and physical, it's just that they're all within the dualistic realm. So the tendency is to be conditioned to put them together and use words like I, me, or mine, which
Mhm.
then give the idea that there's a person. But it's very much the distinction between effortless impersonal being and the personal mode. It's almost like a binary system because you could say effortless impersonal being is like zero when the personal mode is turned off. And then when the personal mode is turned on, it's like the one. So it's just either zero or one. And it's actually always zero in reality because it's always impersonal. But we can assume personalization and we can utilize personalization in a more conscious way. It's just that the conditioning we've had is to be engaged in the personal realm, believe the personal realm is primary, in fact, believe the physical realm is primary, which is what a lot of the conditioning is. And then we're subject to all of the pain and suffering. But when we see that actually impersonal being is where we always remain, then we can begin to regulate the nature, well, the investment in the dualistic realm, and it becomes much easier to navigate, and we can experience because there's actually a sequence which is where where we can maintain impersonal being. So just the simple noticing of the forms appearing, we recognize that it's impersonal, effortless awareness, which is always aware. And as John Wheeler says, all the forms, the sounds or the sensations, they're all being registered in impersonal, effortless awareness. They're not being registered in the mind. And and as we see that, we we can actually change the nature of the experience because we can experience either the mental realm, the emotional realm, or the physical realm in a more conscious way. So what tends to happen is when we become more familiar with effortless being, then that tends to have the effect of making the mind go quieter because effortless being is effortless and it's also neutral, and so it tends to be that the activity of the mind settles down when we opt for effortless impersonal being. And then when the mental realm settles, that tends to settle the emotional body because most emotional turbulence is related to the thoughts. And then when the emotional body settles, then the physical body also settles and becomes uh, balanced. So we, from effortless being, we can recalibrate the mental, emotional, and physical realms, whereas in conventional therapy or the medical system, each of those realms tend to be addressed independently. So if there's some imbalance on the physical level, it tends to be that we're given something just to address the symptoms, and then with the emotional level, we're given something to sort of settle the emotions down, which can be some kind of medication, antidepressants or something, and then the mental realm, we can use different methods to try to address that, like meditation, for instance, or mindfulness. But actually, until we recognize that we're actually beginning and remaining as impersonal, effortless being and awareness, then we never actually get to the switchboard where we can actually reconfigure the nature of the mental, emotional, and physical experience. Because even with things like meditation and mindfulness, it's still the idea that it's a person doing it. So it's still actually maintaining personalization.
I think I, I think I'm pretty good at I know I'm saying the word I, but you understand.
Yeah, we're conditioned. That's fine.
At staying in that fairly neutral place of non-reaction and noticing, having, forgive the word practice, but training myself then that if I'm making or tempted to make a decision out of fear, not to make any decision at all
Fantastic.
and
Yeah.
just let
Great.
that be. And so because I, in my so-called journey, and having had teachers like Joel Goldsmith, who really taught that there is no body, there is no material being, just exactly as you're saying, that even in my practice, I sort of was pushed, the universe pushed me into a holistic health practice in 1999. I had no intention of going this direction at all. But it
Mm.
started out on that physical realm and
Yes.
then sort of went into more the mental aspect,
Mm.
moving from combining them maybe a little bit, but moving more
Yes.
into the mental. And then in 2012, when I started with Joel Goldsmith, sort of realizing that no, this is about the spiritual aspect and still using a lot of that mind aspect in my practice, but totally
Mm.
dropping the physical
Yes.
part. I couldn't work in that field anymore. Sold all the equipment that I had that I was using
Mm.
there.
Mm.
But, and it's really been in the last, I would say more even the last 2 years that wanting to drop even the mental, but using it in some way to help people at least collapse down using the tools that I
Yes.
had before, using it primarily just to collapse down a lot of those old traumas and anxieties in order to get through to that um their infinite being. But one of the things you said in an interview, I think it was with, might have been with Rika or Stephen, it doesn't matter who, you this sort of surprised me. You said that the physical, the etheric, and the astral body were the spiritual realm. And that really surprised me. I didn't quite get that.
Well, they are spiritual because it's all spiritual in a sense,
Hmm.
but the first two koshas are unified, so they're actually in alignment with the infinite being or God, whereas the three dualistic ones, the mental, emotional, and physical, or astral, etheric, and physical, are dualistic in their structure, and they're interrelated really because the one is dependent on the other. But what's interesting really with you, Fern, is um, and this is true of lots of people I have conversations with, which is that everything you've done has actually been perfect, and the sequence in which it's unfolded has also been perfect because it's like a training course where
Hmm.
you started on a particular route, and then it's taken you, and you've been sort of guided actually through the different realms. But the purpose of it is so that you can, well, the way you just described it actually, which is where you can relate to people at any level, because sometimes where the concept of um, or the knowing of impersonal being is something which may not be kind of acceptable or possible in the early stages. There are things you can begin with, which
Hmm.
the way you describe, where you can begin to kind of settle things down. But it's knowing that the whole sequence has been just the way it should have been, and that you've been guided into more and more subtle realms, and being able to help people in different ways. So um, that's um, that's a common theme, really. Most people have that experience. Yours has been in terms of your practice and helping people. With lots of people, initially, it's been to do with their own sort of seeking process, but
Their
it's
own, I'm sorry, their own what?
their own seeking process. So they're
Oh,
not necessarily sharing the knowledge with others, but they've experienced a similar sequence. So the Yeah, the way you describe it, there's already lots of clarity, and the um, the integration of impersonal being into the personal realm is something which you're also guided into, and the experience you mentioned in terms of, dealing with noise, during the night or at different times, um, in a way, that is also part of the training process.
Yeah.
So it's integration, it's integration of what would normally be seen to be disturbing sounds um, into neutrality and being able to, well, really decline the invitation. And you tend to find that things will settle or they transform in some way. But the um, the integration of impersonal being into the personal realm is something which has no upper limits in one way, because um, we can see that impersonal being is ever present, and we have the option always to experience as impersonal being and just noticing the forms arising. But then we also see that um, there is a contrast in terms of the personal realm, and we can look at aspects of our life where there's been deeper investment in the personal realm. So things like our career, relationships, um, conditioning, especially. Um, but we begin to be able to integrate impersonal being into the various aspects of the personal experience. So the way that can happen is um, we see that there is we can see the sort of full extent of the personal realm. So we may ourselves have been very heavily invested in the personal realm. We may have been very competitive. We may have been very aggressive. We may have been very ambitious. All of these things, um, and um, and so we can have those experiences. But what you see is that the more heavily invested we become in the personal realm, the more burdened we are with effort. Because even people who, you could have billionaires, and that's seen in one way to be a very desirable um, aspect of human experience, but it's very heavily burdened because there's a huge amount of responsibility in being a billionaire, in trying to hang on to it all. So, um, but with the integration of impersonal being into the personal realm, we actually relinquish um, the idea that it's necessary for us to take care of things on a personal level, because there are two kinds of intelligence. The one you could say is God's intelligence. The other one is the dualistic form of intelligence. And the dualistic realm is designed to make us take responsibility for our experience, and to believe that it's our mind which is running the show. But the more we align with impersonal being, the more we see that actually things are being guided effortlessly, and it's always been that way. So generally, um, we can begin to see that it's possible to integrate impersonal being in the personal realm. So that tends to introduce the element of well, you could say providence in one way, because we can see that there is this force of intelligence which is guiding us, and so the dualistic realm can become much lighter, because we can experience it in a much more adventurous and playful way, really, because we don't need to take responsibility for everything. We've been burdened, and we've had that full-on experience of believing that we're running the show when we never really were. And so it tends to be that we find ways to integrate impersonal being into the personal realm in a way which is just much more satisfactory. So the neutrality of impersonal being is something which is available in most experiences. And sometimes there can be an intense invitation, into an emotional experience, and there could be a trigger at some point. But generally, we're able to maintain neutrality, and the more familiar we become with neutrality, and the less reactive we are, then the more energy becomes available, or the more energy is withdrawn from the dualistic realm. And then we begin to find space, and we find that where previously we were overburdened, overexerting, um, we can lift our head, and we notice actually there's some space around us, and there's an intelligence which is guiding things. So the purpose of our life experience is actually to allow that intelligence to come in much more, so that we can have a really playful, light, and delightful experience, and live from unity rather than from duality.
Well, I do have a number of questions around the purpose of life as well, and a few
Right.
and a few other things. And I wouldn't give up that that conflict that had happened around the noise for anything, because it was really, really, I believe, instrumental
Mm,
in helping me, forcing me
mm.
in many ways to make a choice.
Yes.
And you use that word choice a number of
Mm,
times, and it was choosing. And one of scripturally it says you can't serve God and mammon, and Joel Goldsmith says you can't ride two horses in the same race. And so I'm either choosing, right, to be a victim of this. I'm either choosing to be fearful of this. I'm either choosing to create a story around this and
mm.
stay in my personal sense of self, or I'm going to
Yeah.
be that effortless, impersonalized awareness. And so even, it's funny, I think it was last night, I woke up to some coyotes outside of my room, and I thought, I don't, outside of my bedroom, and I thought, I'm not applying anything to these coyotes. These have no more meaning to me than the
Mm.
other incident that I had
Yes.
previously
Yes.
personalized, right? It's
Yes.
like, William Samuel, it's just a sound.
Yes.
And who's giving it that meaning? And
Mm,
three of the words, I think these are three words that I received from you, was one was comparison,
mm.
preference, and conflict. And when I applied those three words to that situation, okay, I'm comparing I'm comparing noise to being calm and quiet,
Mm,
right? And because I'm comparing them, then I
mm.
have the preference to quiet, right? And
Yes.
now because I have a preference, it's creating a conflict within me. And so
Yes.
just applying those three words has been really, really, really helpful as well, and
Great.
staying in this place of neutrality. And one of the things that I noticed is that, oh well, so one of the questions I asked myself, okay, what are the beliefs? What are the things that you're holding on to that you don't want to let go of in order to really step in to or live from that place of impersonal being? And it
Mm,
was it was really clear to me there was an aspect in my life where I felt that I needed to have control,
mm,
and that at some level I was threatened if I didn't have control in that situation, which wasn't true at all. But so really letting go of that, and it was a tough one. It has been one of the things that I think has kept me as in the personal sense of self, for the finite being, for many, many years, and just being very unwilling to give that up. And along with it, there was a sense of superiority as well that came along with that control.
mhm,
And it was just like I was reminded of the scripture of Ananias and Sapphira, when the followers of Jesus had banded together and they had sold all of their goods, but Ananias and Sapphira had kept back a portion.
mm.
And Peter said to them, you haven't sinned against anybody but God, right? Which was themselves.
Mm,
And so when I thought about that scripture, okay, what are you withholding that you're not going to step in,
mm,
that's going to keep you as the prodigal forever?
mm.
And not put that on the altar and just give that up. And I'm not saying that I won't that there won't be some temptation there in the future to step back into that role, but it's so diminished. And, I'm confident that it will be gone. But one of the things that came up, I think probably, well, it's probably come up more than once, but came up for me, I think in the last 2 weeks, was the realization that even though I could embrace my infinite being, and or that I could live from that place of infinite being and realize that, you're not the personal little finite self that it's experiencing all of this and giving meaning to it. But I was so unwilling to apply that to my parents who are deceased, my siblings who are deceased. And so I've got a lot of questions around that. Hopefully we have time. And that,
Plenty of time.
what's that?
Plenty of time.
Okay. One was around, I heard you talking with Hale Dwoskin about Lester Levinson. I love Lester Levinson. And there's another young man, his name is Evan Moulton, who had a similar experience to Lester, where they both really just took everything from their past and surrounded it with love and love their journey. But Hale was saying that Lester recalled several of his past incarnations. So, and you said that when the body dies, so it's the physical that dies, the etheric and the astral is what will continue to live. And I think, now please correct me if I'm misquoting you at any point, I'm sure you will.
Okay.
That is then that what can appear as the ghost. And is it because that we haven't let go of that etheric astral aspect of our being, that it continues on and then does appear to reincarnate? I'm not too sure, I just saw a few questions around that. And then really, how is there an individualization or individuation of David, of say Jesus, Moses, Abraham, whoever, Buddha, that continues, that was always there as an individualization, even though it was all infinity being that, and that has opted into I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, that has opted into this life experience for a purpose and then continues on. So I guess it's about infinity's individuation. I'm not even sure what the right word is. I know it's indivisible, but is there still an indivisible aspect of infinity, as you, as me, as everyone?
Yes, because our true nature is attributeless being, and it's a field of infinite possibilities, which means that everything is possible. So if we take the dualistic koshas, so the mental, emotional, and physical, astral, etheric, and physical, then you could say that currently, and in the Hindu version, what we're experiencing is an experience of limitation at the moment, which is, described as Kali Yuga in Hinduism. It means that the association of consciousness with matter and with form is something which it's quite a sort of dense experience at the moment. So firstly, we're conditioned to believe that we are the physical body, and the physical body is primary, and then when that dies, then we're gone. But actually, all of the options always remain. So realization and liberation is to be able to integrate all the realms in a way where they're always available, but we're not bound by them. So currently, the dualistic realm, because it's an energy system, is it's a realm of limitation, because it's the idea, oh, we really are the fit body eyes. We have to go into the etheric realm, and then we have a life review, and we're assessed as to how effective our life has been. And then we could spend, some time in the astral heavens, and then we eventually come back to learn some more lessons on Earth. Well, all of that really is to keep us in the dualistic realm, and because it's maintaining a sense of personalization. What's preferable, though, is to integrate impersonal being into every aspect, so that we can still experience the astral, we could still experience the etheric, and we could theoretically experience the physical, but in a way where it isn't binding, and where the aspects which are currently appearing as limitations, so the appearance of time and space and those things, those limitations dissolve, so that everything becomes available. It's like we have this whole range. So we have infinite bliss, we have the body of wisdom, we have the mental, emotional, and physical realms all available to us. And when we align completely with impersonal being, and when the investment in the dualistic realm, where it's being maintained in a slightly distorted way, as it is at the moment, when that's dissolved, we have access to all of them, and there are no limitations. So we can it's as it is on.
So then in that case, we would have access to the etheric astral body of my mom and dad. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yes. Yeah, everything is available, and it's available just on the basis of attention. So the current structure, it's a bit like having, if you take the analogy of the internet, the internet is a field of infinite possibilities. So we can find anything there, and all we have to do is just have the intention of putting the topic in, the search engine, and then it shows up. But the current experience is that it's like having 3 websites that we can go to. There's the physical website, the etheric website, and the astral website. So instead of experiencing infinity, there are parental controls on the computer, so you can only visit those 3 sites. But so the limitations which appear to exist at the moment will just be blown away. But it's you can see
that's very helpful. I think that probably answers one of the other big questions I had, is that if everything here is just appearing in an infinite field of awareness, and it's this infinite field from this awareness here, which I'm not possessing, but the awareness, then what is this whole purpose of anything that we're doing here? And how real are you, right? So are you any more real than somebody that's in my dream who is really me? Everybody that's in my dream, my night dream, is me.
yes.
In fact, it sometimes astounds me how much more intelligent I am in my dreams than I am in real life. I can do things in my dreams that I have no cognizance of all in this life. And so really, how real is anybody, and who, even as a practitioner, am I helping? And I've heard you mention, you can take what you're doing and help other people, but what is even that? What is all that all about if it's all
Sure.
in the dream anyway, and everything is just appearing or appears to be appearing? So how does that all work?
Well, because there's only one infinite being. You're it, as everything is it. And so it's a field of infinite possibilities. So it's all context, really. So if we take a lot of people have a desire to meet their children or their parents or their friends or siblings in the afterlife. Now, that's absolutely fine. That's really possible. That's a context of experience, though, because the way we can experience, and we can experience like this now, actually, we can experience as a field of infinite bliss. When we experience as a field of infinite bliss, in the body of bliss, what we're experiencing is the totality of existence supplemented by infinite bliss, which is pretty good. And
Yes, that's what I've heard, but I have no control of, as Fern has no control over that whatsoever. Right? That either
yes, well, that aspect, the body of bliss is something which becomes increasingly available as we consciously align with impersonal effortless being, because impersonal effortless being is available in the body of wisdom. Well, the body of wisdom is effortless being. So all forms can arise equally and effortlessly in the body of wisdom. And it's actually in ascending order. Each of the koshas have a sort of ascending order. So the ascending order in the body of wisdom is neutrality is the lowest. And then it moves through things like inspiration into love, compassion, euphoria, and then into bliss. And so the more familiar we become with impersonal being, so we maintain neutrality, which withdraws the energetic investment from the dualistic realm. And then we find we take the direction through the opportunities available in effortless being, which are actually we're remaining as an impersonal, effortless field, but they're higher and higher frequencies of experience, which actually take us in the direction of the body of bliss. So that's a much more favorable option than going into the conceptual realm. If we venture into the dualistic realm, as you've rightly noticed, we're venturing into the realm of comparison, preference, and conflict. And also the mental realm is pretty dry, really, because it's all about being right or being wrong, or it's this way or it's that way. But all of the limitations existing in the dualistic realm, they're contexts of experience which we can have. But if we take the example, say, of the desire to meet our ancestors or our family members when the physical body dies, that's very easily available, and we can experience it on that level. So we can meet them on the etheric level. We can show up again in the physical realm together, which is what a lot of people do. They choose. They've had great times with certain family members before. They all show up again and have a different kind of adventure.
but
Or they
that's
can
what
remain.
but isn't that's what I think was where I'm really being confused, because that's so finite. And if we're all the infinite impersonal being, who is it that's choosing then to come back and re-experience it? Like for me, no thank you, I don't want to do this again.
No, exactly. Well, the thing to know is that we, traditionally, self-realization frees us from the cycle of birth and death. And that's what it does, because once you've recognized that actually you're remaining as an infinite, impersonal, effortless, timeless being, that's all you can be. In this moment, you are already the infinite, effortless, timeless, omnipotent, indestructible being. You can't be anything other than that. You can play a few little games where you pretend that you're a separate person, there are these other beings, they're separate people, and you can have the joy of a dualistic experience where you spend time together. But the difference between being absorbed in the dualistic realm without really understanding what's going on and experiencing from effortless being is that from effortless being, it's a conscious experience. You can opt for certain experiences And because our true nature is a field of infinite possibilities, then we can have any experience actually. But it's just that currently in Kali Yuga, it's a realm of limitation. So the dualistic realm, if people haven't recognized that they are actually always the infinite, effortless, timeless being, then they can be subject to the limitations of the dualistic realm. So there can be a conscious version of the dualistic realm, and there can be the sort of predetermined version where there are certain rules in operation, where if we, because it's there's an element of consent in a way, which is everyone remains as the sovereign being, which is actually impersonal being. But then when we step into the dualistic realm, so we venture
Can I just
through.
press pause for a minute?
Sure.
Everyone, so that who is who? I know this is just language, and forgive me on this one, but if it's everyone, who is the everyone if there's only one? I
Well, it's
guess
it.
I guess it just messes. I know you can't do anything from the intellect. I hear that.
Sure,
There's something that I, that
sure.
is I need I would it would be helpful to just have clarification on if there's the everyone, and then how did that belief in separation, the allegorical Garden of Eden ever happen? Right? How
Hmm.
did that separation ever happen where there was an adoption of good and evil in the first place?
Hmm.
Right. So if we've got
Yes.
an infinite omniscient, and that's another thing I really loved your differentiation between human intellect and omniscience was that it's coming from love versus just and
Hmm.
an
Intelligence
intelligence.
without
Yeah,
love.
that
Hmm.
loving intelligence. That
Hmm.
so that loving intelligence, how did that ever how did the separation or the idea of a separate self ever come about?
Hmm. Well, I'll answer those questions in sequence. So the first one,
Okay.
um, so it's actually there is only the one being, so it's only the one appearing as many. There aren't many beings. There is only
Mhm,
one being.
mhm,
It's just the
mhm.
one. The one being is appearing as everything. And in terms of the distinction between unity and the dualistic realm, it's actually that distinction between the nature of the intelligence. So you could say that a divine creation is a combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence. Um, but there can be an option which is explained in Gnosticism, where there can be a creation which is based on intelligence without love. So the mythology in Gnosticism is that Sophia, who is the goddess of intelligence, normally combines with infinite love, and the result is a divine creation, which is infinite harmony, no limitations. It's just like a theme park with no suffering. It's just everything is possible. There's nothing binding, and it's just a field of infinite possibilities. But Sophia wanted to have a little experience of creating something on her own without the element of love. So she opted to create the dualistic realm. So the dualistic realm is based on intelligence. So the creation of the dualistic realm, which is the astral, etheric, and physical, um, the intelligence operating there um, is a dualistic form of intelligence, and it's an intelligence which is actually predatory because the intelligence of the infinite being combines with infinite love, and it's self-sufficient. But the intelligence in the dualistic realm isn't self-sufficient because it's like a half creation really, because it lacks the love. So the way the dualistic realm is sustained is through the energy that's invested in it through the beings who have ventured into that experience. And that's really what's going on. All the invitations, the mental, emotional, and all the invitations into energetic compromise, that is all, it's all designed to fuel the dualistic matrix. So lots of things which people see as being natural, things like death, illness, accidents, suffering, mental and emotional turmoil, all of these things, people say, oh, that's just life, it's just like that. But actually, it's all part of the design of the dualistic realm. They're just very effective methods of putting the beings into mental and emotional compromise, where they're most likely to be personalizing their experience and investing their energy in the dualistic realm and maintaining it. So it's it's a pretty wild old ride, really.
Well, so I've heard you talk about it because I'm not familiar with the Gnostic teachings, and I've heard you mention Sophia before, but you're saying that that's a myth. So it doesn't really, so a myth is a myth.
Well,
Where,
it
so infinite being then, infinite being, is it infinite being that which is infinite potential, infinite experience, wanting to experience duality?
well, yes, you what you could say is because the infinite being ultimately is a combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence. But because it's infinitely loving and it's a field of infinite potential, there is the potential to have an experience of infinite intelligence without infinite love, which is what the dualistic realm is. But in a way, an anomaly. It's almost like it's like a very loving parent, and the parent loves their child so much that it permits it to do anything at all. And the child can become very destructive and misbehave and be a complete liability. But it's because of the love of the parents they have for the child. Quite often, well, sometimes I think lots of people have a friend in this category where they have children, and the parents think the children are absolutely wonderful, but they're so disruptive that you kind of avoid meeting them because you don't want to be around them. And it's a bit like that with the dualistic realm. It's because of the infinite love of the infinite being that the possibility of this dualistic experience emerged. The thing to know, though, is that it is only a virtual reality. It never really happened. It's it's the dualistic matrix blinks in and out. So from it's sort of on and off
Yeah, I like that
36,000
analogy of
times
the
a second.
0, 1. That was
That's
helpful.
what it is. So there is actually no continuity. It looks as though there's continuity, but it's the same as a film. A reel of film going through a projector. It's just a series of separate frames, but because they go through quite quickly, it's imperceptible that actually, they're only these still frames whizzing through the projector.
Hmm.
So in a way, we can experience, it's all context. So on the lowest level, you could say there is the opportunity to experience the limitations of the human realm. So we experience all the suffering, we experience separation, we experience lack, loss, all of the things peculiar to the dualistic realm, dissatisfaction. Um, and then we begin to realize, well, actually, that is only like a virtual reality show. And then we begin to see, well, actually, I never became that character. So the character is only like a game piece. So Fern really is a character in the dualistic game. You're the infinite being, and the infinite being is looking through the eyes of the virtual reality suit, which was called Fern, without ever actually entering into the dualistic realm. And it's simultaneously the infinite ocean of awareness within which all of the matrices and time streams and creations appear. Um, and um, and so with experiences like you're saying about, meeting your parents or whatever after the death of the physical body, it's possible to, like in this moment, if you're resting as impersonal, effortless, timeless being, you're not only meeting them, you are them. It's like there's only the one being. The sense, using John Wheeler's terms, presence, awareness, existence. So the presence in this moment is the presence of the infinite being. It's just right here and now. The sense of awareness is the knowing, it's the impersonal knowing of all the forms appearing, which are peculiar or particular to this moment. And the sense of existence, which we feel is very tangible and we've taken to be the existence of the individual, never was the individual all along. It's remained as the existence of the infinite being, which we're knowing directly from moment to moment. That's what is real. And so we can experience things in different contexts, but it's just that the way the dualistic realm works is it gives us the option for very limited experience, but then it begins to open up where we see, well, actually the limitations which we thought were completely binding, believing yourself to be a human being, believing yourself to be mortal, believing the thoughts to be yours, the emotions, believing that the transformation of forms means the end of those forms, you'll never see them again, and all the emotional and mental torture that goes with all that. All of that is just, it's like a computer game.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I think I've been very guilty in the past quite often of quoting things that I knew intellectually prior to knowing them from the heart. And that's one of them. I have often quoted, there's only one life living 8 billion people, right?
Yes.
And I think I've heard it differently today. I mean, I've heard it in the truth in which I was saying it, but was only
Mm.
saying it from the intellect
Yes.
before. Because that is such a big one for in the dualistic realm, is the grief and the loss, the perceived loss of those that we have, given identity to, whether it was a love or hate identity, right? I had the in this, you know, earth school, had had lovely parents and lovely family, but I know through the people that I work with, that's certainly, I don't have to have them to work with, but just, that there's many, many out there that have not had that
Mm.
experience and who would
Yes.
probably sooner not ever see those people again, right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah, but if there was a purpose to this, what would it be? If there was a purpose to us having this parenthesis in eternity, this birth date, death date.
Mm. Well, these are just contexts, really. But one context is that what we're experiencing effectively is only a movie, and all of the components in the movie. So things like, huge periods of time, like in the Hindu version, the yugas, that there are these millions of years and all these things going on. That those components could actually just be components in the movie, and so the sequence of from personalization to impersonal being and self-realization is also a storyline in the movie. And the idea that we can, have these extreme experiences of limitation and disturbance are all actually within the movie. Um, so, so that's one context. Another one is that we we've had experiences in terms of the way the koshas actually are revealed. We all begin and remain as impersonal being or attributist being. Um, but so the first kosher to appear is infinite bliss. So we've all experienced infinite bliss, but infinite bliss on its own could become a little bit, I wouldn't say tedious, because it's totally
Well, that's what
self-sufficient.
happened to Lester Levinson. He was in that bliss state for so long, and then it went into the peace. I think he
Yes.
was glad for because it was so overpowering being in
Yes.
that place of bliss.
Yes. Um, we can then experience the body of wisdom, which is where all forms arise equally and effortlessly. So we experience then in a very childlike way. So the dualistic kind of perception hasn't been activated. So we're just experiencing everything as a sort of magical kaleidoscope. And and then for variation on the experience, there's the option for the dualistic realm. What you could say about the dualistic realm, though, is that it's being administered by an intelligence which is anti-life. It's sort of, because it's like a predatory realm, because the components in the dualistic realm, death, sickness, illness, accidents, suffering, all the things we're familiar with, um, the religions say the creator of this realm is a god of love, but it doesn't take much to see that actually a god of love wouldn't create a show like this.
Mhm.
And so you can see how we've opted, or we've kind of ventured into an experience where we didn't realize the implications of what we were letting ourselves in for. That's another context. Um, there's another one, which is where we we could be having this experience, and the theme of the movie is that the dualistic realm is being reintegrated into unity consciousness. And the way that happens is when more and more people disconnect from identification with the dualistic realm, they withdraw their energetic investment, they reclaim their true status as the infinite, impersonal, timeless, effortless being. And the energetic investment which is required to sustain the dualistic realm is no longer available. So the dualistic realm collapses, and it's integrated back into unity. And so that's another context. So it's all of these simultaneously in one way, because it's a field of infinite possibilities. You can't say it's either or. It's like it's a very elaborate multi-dimensional movie with innumerable themes running all at the same time.
Mhm.
But the benefit of self-realization is that from the initial conditioning we have in the human realm, which is that we are a human being in time and space, we're a separate being, we have a name, we have a start date and an end date, we have a storyline, to actually waking up to realize that that is only a construct. That's just this, as Levinson says, it's a dream. Firstly, you see it as being real, then you see it as a dream, then you realize it's a dream which never happened. And so where we seem to be at the moment is that in the storyline on a collective level. So there are many realizations now, more than ever actually, where the investment in the dualistic realm has been withdrawn, and so lots of beings are actually realigning with with their infinite nature, and the infinite being is stepping forward to administer things. The dualistic realm is alert to that, so it's throwing everything at the moment to try to keep everyone in fear and duality and suffering.
And we either
Because
consent to play the game or we don't, right?
yeah, well, we can. we're sort of watching it play out in a way because once there's been the clarity in terms of knowing your infinite nature, you know that it's only a movie anyway.
Mhm.
So the previous engagement and believing it to be really tragic or very difficult or challenging, or you realize there are only themes in the movie, and so there isn't the preoccupation, there isn't the investment. It's just quite interesting, really, just to see where it's going.
Yes, I before I met you, I had heard of Tony Parsons, and I've heard you speak of him before as well. And Tony says it's, it's just everything just happening. And it doesn't really matter what we do. And that it seems to me that what you're saying is, and I could be wrong, is that everything has been, as you'd mentioned, in my experience, everything happened in that sequence in order for me to be at this place,
Yes.
being awareness, and that it wouldn't have mattered what had happened in my life. And that sort of, I kind of wondered about that, because every person that I've heard that has been a seeker has been on a path, right? They have
Yes.
taken different steps. Everybody that's showing up for Tony Parsons has had
Mm.
various experience of seeking. Everybody that shows up for you, everyone that's showing up on any non-dualistic platform has, for the most part at least, has been a seeker, has had some sort
Yes.
of an experience. And yet, from his perspective, he says it's all just what's happening, and there's no rhyme or at least the way that I'm reading him. I could be picking up his message incorrectly, that it doesn't really matter. It's just all what's happening.
Mm. I I feel that because it's a field of infinite possibilities, then we can keep everything open so it remains infinite, or we can close it down to some degree. Now, um, what I would say is radical non-duality, which is Tony's version, is the
Okay.
idea that it's all just happening.
Hmm.
But there's actually, what he's saying is true in an absolute sense, but there isn't really any understanding of the way the dualistic realm functions. Because when you become aware that the mental, emotional, and physical realms are part of this energetic construct, where you can actually withdraw the investment from those, and you can consciously align with impersonal being, um, rather than being subject to the dualistic realm, um, then there's an aspect of consciousness and a refinement in the nature of the experience which is actually available. But radical non-duality people would say, oh, it's all just happening, there's nothing you can do. And when people accept that concept, they've consented to that view. And
Hmm.
so quite often they're experiencing a life of extreme suffering. I've heard people ask Tony questions like, well, what's depression? And Tony has said, well, that's just the beloved appearing as depression. Well, it's not a great solution, really, because it's just the same old horrible experience. But calling it the beloved doesn't really make any difference.
Well, that's interesting, because I've heard him use that word beloved before, but what I felt, um, and I love Tony. I think he's this very sweet individual from
Mm.
his human perspective. But
Yeah.
what I felt when I listened to the messages was it was lacking love. That it
Yes.
seemed to lack the love element, even though he
Yes.
refers to it as the beloved.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because um, it's actually radical non-duality is in service to the dualistic realm, really, because it's making people feel as though there is no option but to experience whatever is being thrown at them. So if somebody is being conditioned into, psychosis or depression, or
Hmm.
whatever the conditioning is, that's just the beloved, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I know quite a few people who've adopted that and have committed suicide. including a
I
couple of
can I
number
can
of
see why. I could understand that. Yes, and so now I think you've probably answered this, so forgive me for asking it again, but I've heard you say volunteering in the dualistic world. So, um, infinite being, so it's not real. We were never human, and yet there's volunteering to be into the matrix.
Yes. Well, it's seeing the different contexts. So everyone remains as infinite attributeless being. That's all we can ever be. But we can play in these different realms of experience. So we can lots of beings just they only venture into the body of bliss and they remain there. They don't venture further than that. So they don't venture into the body of wisdom. In the body of wisdom, it's like a divine creation. So everything is remains harmonious. There's no duality. There's no judgment. It's self-sufficient. It's a combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence. So it's very harmonious. It's a sort of Sound of Music version of spirituality. And
It is really beautiful, um, living from that place of knowing that there is no person there, there's no event there that I need to judge.
yes,
That and just sort of stepping back from that and stepping into that being awareness,
yes,
and not consenting to getting dragged in to
mm,
seeing the snake when it's only the rope, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, very
Then
nice.
the dualistic option emerges, and there are just certain things. Um, as a result of speaking with thousands of people, it's just that there are certain themes which are fairly consistent. So the one is quite often people have had quite extreme experiences in the early part of life, which have been quite intense invitations into the personal realm. So
Mhm,
there's a lot of spiritual potential, but it's as though the dualistic realm doesn't want them to realize that. So they're diverted into personalization. So it can be sometimes it can be bereavement or loss or abuse or, various things. Um, but then there is also um, there's also another theme, which is like a training course, and this applies to you, which is where there's been quite intense seeking, which it's appeared as though it's Fern who is looking to, find completion. But actually, all along, it's the infinite being guiding the show
mhm,
so that you're learning these things, which I feel will be available. Because I think the next phase in the dualistic show is going to be a very interesting one. And my intuition is that most people I speak with are the next wave of beings
mhm,
who are going to be assisting with the transformation in consciousness. Now, that's all in the movie.
mhm,
Like, we're not saving the infinite being from anything. It's just all entertainment ultimately. But there are just those themes which are recognizable, and so you can just see how that's playing out. But the because we're the infinite being, then the context we hold is really important. So the context I like to hold, and I've seen to be very effective, is we can hold the broadest possible context in terms of our experience. So just knowing that we can we can experience every aspect of remaining as infinite impersonal being, and also experience the integration of impersonal being into virtually every aspect of the personal realm as well. So it's a paradox in a way, because it's simultaneously infinite, timeless, omnipotent, eternal, integrated within the ever-changing dualistic field of turbulence. Um, and so it's a very rich experience, but it really, you're writing the script. You're the infinite being, and you're writing the script of your own experience in many ways. And so from the when you recognize that you're the infinite impersonal being, you recognize that the infinite impersonal being has sovereignty. So it's actually calling the shots. If we venture into the dualistic realm and we adopt personalization, then there are limitations to that experience because the sovereignty only belongs to the infinite impersonal being. It doesn't belong to the personal entity. The personal entity is like a few pixelations in the computer game.
Yeah. Yeah, I like when you use in writing the script. I've offered that as for food for thought for those who come to me, and that, are you sure you want to keep that story? Right. And that's a Byron Katie thing, right? I mean, is it
That's
true? And are
yes.
you absolutely sure it's true? Right. But,
Yeah.
and so I say, write the story, and sometimes even writing the story down, and then I offer them, if it's not the story you want to keep, have a book burning. And
Oh yeah.
but I need to have my own book burnings. And I think I've burnt quite a few, thankfully, but and hopefully, living from at least a place of neutrality at this point. And what I felt from you, David, is that so we we make those choices. I forget, there's another word you use other than choice. I can't remember what it is, but we make those choices until really infinite being is living us. And that's where I see you're coming from. And as I've
Mm.
shared my thoughts about you with others, and as I've watched you, is that there's just no speck of ego. And that has to be infinite being coming through. And I just so appreciate you for
Mm.
living from your true self.
Thank you. It's it's an interesting paradox really because the idea of being without ego seems to be an attainment. You know, it's sort of dressed up as being an attainment based on a huge amount of spiritual practice, but it's actually the simplicity of seeing that we've just remained as impersonal being, and where there's impersonal being, there can't be any ego. So it's just, but it's really simple.
But it wasn't always simple for you, was it?
No, it wasn't. You know,
No, and I
there's
loved your story. I think you said in the 80s you were having some challenges until one day you were sitting there and you saw the bus go by and you just had the realization that it was just all in your awareness, that there
mm,
was an opening up there that happened. But again, you as David had nothing to do that with that particular aspect, right?
no,
And
the self revealing itself to
yeah,
itself.
I love that statement, the self-revealing itself to itself. And yeah, it's such a beautiful thought to hold on to.
But yeah, it's just an amazingly rich um, opportunity for experience and adventure, really. That's, our infinite nature is a field of infinite possibilities. We can either close things down so we have a more limited version, or we can open them up and have a very expansive version. And from the sovereignty of impersonal being, you realize the option for it to be much more expansive becomes available to us.
Hmm. Yeah, that word option. Yeah. Mhm. So I think you may have, this has nothing to do with our previous conversation, but I have been sort of looking forward to you doing like group Zoom meetings, and years back you said that you didn't do them because the consciousness wasn't there, and there was effort in tuning into each person and doing that. But the ones that you've done recently, I heard you say that 5 out of the 9 people had, self-realized. And
Yes.
so doing a Zoom meeting in that environment, it was a different experience. And so I haven't received any notifications of your Zoom meetings, and I'm just wondering if you are having any group Zooms, and if so, how could I join into those?
Yeah, certainly. Well, a lady I had a conversation with several months ago. She lives in New York, and she offered to help in some way. She said, is there any way I can help with what you're doing? And I said, well, I would really like to be able to do some group meetings now because the energy has changed. As you said, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, um, most of the questions were coming from the mind. So there wasn't really any benefit in answering them. There's a much more integrated version now, and because lots of people are familiar with the material on my YouTube channel, um, huge numbers of people are realizing their true nature just from watching the conversations without ever having a one-to-one. And so so there's potential now for group meetings where it can be much more beneficial, and the power of the consciousness of the group would be very interesting. But because the greater number of people are in the integration phase, because the integration of impersonal being into the personal mode is something we're all doing, actually. It's an ongoing process with no upper limits. So that's the aspect really which could be very beneficial with group meetings, and why I'd like to be able to get them underway. Um, the, um,
Is there any way that
the
I can help you with that? I would love to be able to help you with that in any way that I could.
Well, that's very kind. Well, just showing up would be great, actually. But
I'll definitely be showing up. There's no question. I'll bring lots of my friends with me.
fantastic. Well, the lady who's doing it, there are a couple of sort of synchronicities. There's a really great guy who wrote to me. He realized his true nature from watching some of the conversations, and he said he noticed that my website is quite antiquated now. It's like 15 years old or something, and I've not really updated it. And he said, "Well, David, if you do ever need a new website, I'd be very happy to build one for you." And so the lady from New York said, "Well, actually, David, I think you need a new website before we get on with this." So I introduced this gentleman to the lady who's doing the organization of the group meetings, and they just get on really well. So they have built a new website. The address is davidbingham.org. It's online already,
Oh,
and there's some information on there about the group meetings,
oh,
and
perfect.
they're due to start quite soon, but it's in the hands of the people who are putting it together, really, because I've said, with my commitment at the moment, I'm available for the meetings, but I can't really do any of the work behind the scenes.
Effortless
So
being has obviously been orchestrating all of that, and
yes,
that is the beauty of it. And I believe I have been able to sort of let go and so-called let God orchestrate in many ways, and looking forward
yes.
to that greater integration of effortless being into whatever aspect of the dualistic Fern is still trying to, to drive the car here. And
Well, it's really amazing for you, Fern, because everything you've done, you have lots of contacts, you're already speaking with people, and there's a sort of advanced version which has been activated, and the people coming to you will be much more advanced, and
I've noticed that already. It's been, in fact, I just decided even how I was doing my practice before, that I wouldn't be seeking any clients at all, that people would need to show up from having known me from before in whatever way, and just
Yes.
showing up. And it's really been quite amazing how that has transpired, and where they're at and what they're actually looking for,
Yes.
not just better humanhood. Because I'm certainly not interested, not that, all things being equal, better humanhood isn't nice, but that's certainly not what I'm looking for, is
Mm.
just better humanhood. It's
Mm.
that
Well, your purpose for
living
showing up,
from that, living from that being awareness,
yes,
and not owning it, getting rid of trying to possess it,
yeah, yeah.
and being, as I think, you use the word conscious as well, and it really is living consciously, isn't it? Or am I wrong on that?
It is living consciously. It's being conscious. It's being conscious of what is coming to us effortlessly, really,
Mhm,
which is the opposite of the way we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to be conceptualizing, to be having goals, intentions,
mhm,
and trying to drive things in a particular direction, where the mind is the source of whatever is arising. But effortless being is totally different to that, because it's being available, it's having a sense or even an intention to be in service to one's infinite nature rather than being in service to individuality. And
mhm,
then the infinite being brings the resources required, and it brings them effortlessly. So it's being alert to the things which just come from nowhere, rather than striving or trying to persuade anybody or put a deal together. There's none of that really. It's just everything we need is just presented effortlessly to us, and it's just the most amazingly magical game. And the more we notice it, the more it happens.
lovely.
And that's really where where you are, because it's the the ultimate purpose of you showing up is that you're actually in service to the infinite being. That's your whole purpose, and everything you've done to this point has
Oh,
been
that's
just to
beautiful.
facilitate that.
That puts that in a whole different context for me, because when I think I heard you saying, and maybe you didn't even say it, maybe I just heard you saying that, we're here to help others and so forth. But when you put it in the context of I'm here to serve infinite being, which is the truth, because each one of them is infinite being, but making that connection that whoever I'm serving is infinite being. And so, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that.
Great. And that it's on the highest level. And the nature of the infinite being, aligning with your infinite nature, is the infinite being won't settle for anything less than being fully aligned with your infinite nature and being in service on the highest level, where it's a combination of assisting people to realize that they are the infinite, impersonal,
Mhm,
effortless, timeless being, but also to become free of the dualistic matrix, to become energetically free. And
mhm.
there are only themes in the movie. It's a big movie, really, but it's just the most amazing adventure. If you have eternity on your hands, as we do, it's
If
quite a
what?
fun way to,
If what?
as as we have eternity on our
Oh,
hands,
yeah.
it's quite a nice way to spend some of it.
Even so, I don't want to come back.
No, definitely. Well,
The Fern person doesn't want to come back anyway. But
well, the nice thing is that you can only remain as the infinite impersonal being, which doesn't come and go. And the option to remain in alignment with infinite impersonal being is very tangibly there. So you call the shots on the dualistic realm once you realize that. And so
Mhm,
um, you can experience the dualistic realm more on your own terms. So the aspects of it which are really delightful, um, like personal love and all of the uplifting aspects of the dualistic realm are all still available, but the ones which are limiting, we just say, no, I don't think I'm going to have that anymore.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking this time with me, David. It's been really lovely, and
It's been great fun because you're a very seasoned traveler, really, and you have so much depth in terms of your knowledge and experience. So it's yeah, been a great conversation.
but I don't want to be a traveler anymore, right? No more traveling and no more
No,
little finite intelligence driving the car. Um,
no,
so yeah, that's if there was a goal, I have no other desires or goals. If there was a goal, that's, as Christ says, die daily to that
yes,
little personal sense of self.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're home and dry.
Nice. Well, I will look forward to seeing you on your group Zoom meetings when that happens. And what is the website for that now? What is your new website?
It's um it's davidbingham.org,
Okay.
O-R-G.
Oh, that's easy.
Very easy.
It's amazing you're able to get that name. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That it was available. That is pretty wild.
Effortless being.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes, effortless being.
effortless being is against all odds. You don't need
That's
to
right. Totally. It is against all odds. I love that. Nice.